Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin. Thank you so much for spending your time with the Surrey Board of Trade, soon to be the Surrey and White Rock Board of Trade. I'd like to remind you to please turn off your cell phones to avoid any interruptions in the program. If you don't want your photo taken, please let the staff know. We do use photos for both internal and external publications. Everyone, I'm Anita Huberman. I'm President and CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade and Honorary Captain of the Royal Canadian Navy, appointed by Canada's Defence Minister. And thank you so much for coming to today's lunch that is focused on global talent, local impact, moving Canada's economy forward through Canada's immigration, refugees, and citizenship portfolio. Everyone, please give a great Surrey welcome to Canada's Minister, Marc Miller. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of our Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tawasin, Kaikut, Coquitlam, our Inuit, and our Métis peoples. They have a profound connection to the land and water that surrounds our great cities of Surrey and White Rock. Today's event would not be possible without the ongoing sponsorship support of our organization. Our progress partners are the Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, represented by SNF Benefits, the law firm of Fasken, Focus College, Lighthouse Labs, and Western Community College. A round of applause, please. And some guests that I'd like to recognize in the audience are representing Member of Parliament John Aldag. Member of Parliament for Cloverdale Langley is Kieran Dhaliwal. Kieran, she's here. MP Suk Dhaliwal, MP for Surrey Newton. Everyone, applaud louder. These people work really hard for us in Ottawa. MP Ken Hardy for Fleetwood, Port Hills. City of Surrey Councillor Linda Ennis. And Honorary Consul of Sri Lanka, Mr. Jim Bennett. Everyone, the Surrey Board of Trade, we are one of the top 5 largest chambers of commerce boards of trade in Canada. There are 430 of us. Our mandate is to support business, bring business into our area. And we do that through a very diversified service portfolio. To tell you more about who we are and our great city of Surrey, please turn your attention to the screens. As one of the fastest growing cities in Canada, Surrey is an opportunity city. The Surrey Board of Trade is the concierge of connections.
My name is Dr. Paul Gotra. I am founder and CEO of Simtech Green Energy. Surrey Board of Trade has always been an invaluable part of our business. They have greatly helped us to build business relations, facilitate meetings with our potential customers, and helped us to grow business tremendously through their efforts.
The Surrey Board of Trade is focused on making Surrey an opportunity city by instigating change at the different levels of government, offering a variety of business support services, international trade support services, and being the concierge of connections for the business community in Surrey.
My name is Maria Santos-Graves, the owner and president of Surrey Hearing Care Incorporated. Since our inception, Surrey Hearing Care has proudly been a member of Surrey Board of Trade. The organization played a pivotal role in positioning our business and as a leader in the hearing industry. Through the provision of valuable tools, informative resources, and network opportunities with professionals across different sectors, the Surrey Board of Trade has been instrumental in our growth and success.
If it's in the agricultural sector or in the retail sector, if they're needing a government connection, if they have an issue related to government, we are there for them, and we have a proven track record of success to ensure that businesses are helped when they need it in a timely way.
Surrey Board of Trade helps me to build relationship with the right people, whether at City of Surrey, the province, or key partners like PowerTech Labs and BC Hydro.
Being a member of Surrey Board of Trade has not only expanded my network, but it has also provided invaluable resources, guidance, and a sense of community that has greatly contributed to the success and sustainability of both my company, Surrey Hearing Care, and Minamar Janitorial Services.
If you are interested in growing your business, Surrey Board of Trade is an invaluable resource for networking and collaborating with the community and other businesses.
So whether you're a small business or a medium-sized business or a large business, starting out or expanding, we have the connections. We have the resources to ensure that you have what you need during your journey as an entrepreneur. Minister, we in Surrey are the highest newcomer and refugee destination within British Columbia. 50% of our population has a mother tongue other than English. And I, of course, I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents came from India. My mom, she was 19 years old when she arrived in Canada from Bombay. She didn't speak a word of English, but Canada was and is a land of economic opportunity. And we're here, all of us in the audience, to work together as we become BC's largest city in British Columbia, making ourselves a technology destination, a hydrogen center of excellence. We're a border city. We have an international docking facility, Dubai Ports. We are a global city, a global destination. And we're so pleased to have with us, everyone, Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. He was first elected in 2015 as a member of Parliament in Montreal. He has previously served as Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations and as Minister of Indigenous Services. Before entering politics, he was a practicing lawyer. He specialized in mergers and acquisitions with a focus on international and commercial law and worked in Montreal, Stockholm, and New York City. Previously, he served as an infantry soldier in our Canadian Armed Forces. Everyone, please help me welcome Minister Marc Miller to the stage.
Thank you so much, Anita, and hi everyone. Nice to see all of you. It's a real pleasure to be here in Surrey. I'm beginning and do thank you, Anita, for acknowledging the lands that we're on. These are very important acknowledgements, and give us a moment to reflect on our past and our present and future with Indigenous peoples. So I want to. You mentioned your history, but Suk and Ken and I just came from a citizenship ceremony where we welcomed another 40 new Canadians from 18 countries to Surrey. And just to see the smiles on their faces as they're celebrating this amazing moment that I didn't do because I got given it on birth, but it's amazing to see people that have fought to be Canadians and work so hard, and they're here, and to celebrate their day is really, really cool. And so that is a pleasure of mine. Suk says, and I think a number of people agree with him, that I have one of the hardest jobs out there. This was a very easy ceremony to be at because I was joking, but they can't yell at me until they swear the oath, and then they don't have to listen to me. But it's just really cool to be able to celebrate it with them and be a small part of that of their future. Comme Anita l'a souligné, l'immigration a façonné le Canada depuis ses débuts, à l'exception évidemment des Autochtones qui sont ici depuis des temps immémoriaux. Tous les Canadiens résidents permanents qui sont ici ont leur histoire qui commence avec l'immigration, comme moi-même, sauf quelques générations antérieures. Immigration shapes our economy. It continues to shape Surrey's economy, especially where it is situated geographically and how it's evolved over the last decades. Canada's labor market growth in the last few years has been entirely driven by newcomers, about 96%. When we talk about immigration, these aren't abstract conversations. They're everybody's lived experience. 50% of Surrey, 25% of Canada. We're talking about our friends, families, co-workers, partners, neighbors, kids. It shapes our communities. Across Canada and major cities like Surrey, Vancouver, there are numerous diverse people and unique cultural celebration. We celebrate Diwali and Passover, Christmas and Ramadan, Nowruz, and Lent. I don't celebrate Lent, but I sometimes pretend I do. You're supposed to give something up, and I give up giving up things in Lent. But, the diversity, I'm not the best Christian in the world. I'll admit that publicly. The diversity of our communities here in Canada connects us to the global markets, and by extension, the global issues. The record levels of refugees and displaced people caused by conflicts and war that will probably hit another historical summit this year. Political, economic upheaval, and climate change-driven disasters is felt by many here. Canadians want us to help these families, and they want Canada to do things. Seniors and children as well, who are some of the most vulnerable. And we have a proud history of refugee resettlement. I was in Geneva in the late fall, just before Christmas, and Canada is still a beacon of hope for a lot of countries that have given up hope, and I think that's something that's important to remember. We criticize ourselves a lot here in Canada, and there's lots of internal debates, but Canada, for a lot of countries, is still seen as that beacon of light for the programs that we have, the way we welcome newcomers. Not that it's perfect, but it is something. It's important sometimes to step outside your country and realize how good you actually have it, and I think that's an immense part of the privilege that I have as being the immigration minister. Is I talk to my other colleagues, and they're happy to see what we're doing, and happy to copy it sometimes and give it perhaps a fancier name and claim it's their own. But you see a lot of Canada's programs and some of the work that the U.S. does, for example. We found new permanent pathways recently for Yazidi refugees, survivors of Daesh, Afghans following the fall of Kabul. Canada is also a temporary haven for well over 300,000 Ukrainians fleeing illegal invasion of their country by Russia, as well as those facing a devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Immigration also brings global communities here through programs for international students. We will probably talk about that in the question and answer session. Everyone knows that Surrey has about half of the designated learning institutions in British Columbia. Mais avec une population vieillissante et des familles moins nombreuses, l'immigration est essentielle pour garantir que nous disposons de travailleurs dont nous avons besoin pour continuer à soutenir l'infrastructure sociale dont les Canadiens s'attendent. With the aging population that we have, 7 workers to 1 person when I was born in 1973, now 3 or 2 to 1 retiree. That's a crisis in the making if we don't do something immediately. And the choice is almost binary. We could have a baby boom. We know that the number of people having kids keeps dropping, as well as the number of kids per family. Even if we had a baby boom today, we'd have to wait 20, 23 years to see that productivity happen. So we can't just stop immigration, but we can do a better job at it, and we can be smarter about it. And we'll maybe talk about that in the question and answer session. We're getting workers in to deal with addressing the real challenges that we're facing today, building more homes. The need for construction and workers and tradespeople, particularly as a demographic that doesn't comprise as a percentage of the population as many newcomers as it should. And we need people to staff our hospitals. That's just the reality. With that aging population, we need to staff those hospitals, and that's part of the equation that sometimes we don't look at carefully enough. And you know, as members of the Board of Trade, I've said this in Toronto, I've said this in Montreal. I think probably as a society we've gotten a little complacent or lazy in selling to ourselves and to the population at large the value and the beauty of immigration. Even the federal government's not immune to that criticism. We have taken it as sort of as part of Canada's natural DNA. But then when we see issues of social cohesion and challenges based with very large volume, we sometimes don't take that step back to realize how important it is to the country. And I think that's a social reflection that we have to have as we continue to convince ourselves that that consensus that has been carefully built doesn't erode, because it can be carefully attacked, or it can be easily attacked when you have issues like rising interest rates, inflation. There is also sometimes a tendency to blame immigrants, and I don't think we want a country like that. We see a lot of countries that are having that toxic debate, and we can still be quite proud, I think, as one of the few countries where we see large increases in immigration, where we still have that. Every major party is still very positive about immigration. And it's tenuous, but I think we have to keep being quite positive about that, because the political opportunism rears its head in very many ways, and you don't want to see immigrants being targeted in the next election, or even as part of the social culture of politics in Canada. One of the steps that I took that probably impacts Surrey more than some other places around the country, there are places where it impacts it more. In Ontario, was to deal with the integrity issues in around the international student programs. International students provide social and cultural benefits and educational benefits to Canadians, but to preserve these benefits and a program that was based on having some of the best institutions in the world radiate through its international students, we've created a situation where many international students are left vulnerable. And so this is something that I and my team, along with my provincial counterparts, are working to improve the integrity of. Unfortunately, some institutions have been increasing their intake of students without taking into account critical supports like housing and healthcare, including mental health. This renders students vulnerable to abuse and exploitation, coupled with sometimes the tuition rates that they pay at 3, 4, 5, 6 times the rates of what domestic children pay. It's why we're taking a number of actions to reform the international student program and to preserve its integrity. Among a suite of measures I introduced in the fall and then in January was a temporary 2-year national cap on new study permits. This will help ensure that growth under the program is stable and sustainable, as well as spreading out the number. I'm the federal government. I can't be privileging any particular province, spreading out the number of visas available to provinces in order to deal with that, the fairness aspect of the international visas program. In addition, my department is working on establishing a recognized institutions framework to support post-secondary institutions that provide adequate supports for international students, and I've already had a number of conversations with principals, rectors, or presidents of these institutions. Under this model that it was announced prior to the January announcement, an educational institution that provides strong supports and services to international students, including helping them in finding housing, would get benefits such as priority processing for study permits for students destined to their institution. We're also taking critical steps to recalibrate the number of temporary residents writ large in Canada, with the aim of reducing the percentage of temporary residents to 5% over the next 3 years from 6-7% of where it is now. There's sometimes a misunderstanding about what that actually looks like and what the face of people that are here temporarily actually looks like. The tendency is to think of people that are working in the agricultural sector or in the fish processing sector. That's only about 10%. The rest of it, international students, people that are on postgraduate work permits, people that are here as a benefit of our international trade agreements that we have across Canada, across the world, where we send people abroad. They can also send people here. And some of the temporary asylum that we've provided, for example, to Ukrainians as well as asylum seekers. That comprises a much more complex pie chart than simply the knee-jerk reflection to think this is just temporary foreign workers. Reducing that is, there's some art, there's some science to it, but we have to get it right. If it's just the federal government doing it, it's not recognizing the need for having temporary labor in this country. We're in a period of food inflation. We know that there are jobs that can't be filled by Canadians. There's many reasons to have temporary labor in this. One of them isn't to have them stuck here with no prospect of any future. And I think that's the challenge that I had discussing on Friday in Montreal with my immigration ministers from different provinces, is that how do we do this in a way that doesn't damage the economy, maintains the dignity of the people that are here, while making sure that we deal with some of the historical flows that have jumped. We, as a country, have been at 2% temporary residency. It's jumped to 5, 6, 7 very quickly. That comes with challenges that volume has on affordability, on the cost of shelter, but it's also had some very positive effects on the economy. So ramping that down, making sure we get that a little under control, is as much a duty of mine as it is the provincial counterparts that know their labor markets sometimes more intimately than a guy from Montreal does. And getting it right is exceedingly important in the context, because we don't want to damage local or national economies. That goes to the theme that I think we have to deal with as a country in the challenges that newcomers face every day, but also as the aggregate volume impact has on places like Surrey, on places across the country where people naturally flow to. But I think it's part of our government being responsible in making sure that people are properly welcomed, and that Canada has the capacity to welcome people in the historic amounts that it has. And we continue as a country to make sure that we bring in 500,000 permanent residency, most of whom will select to become Canadian citizens. It'll be more than the 40 today from the 18 countries that we welcomed over the next few years, but it's important. And if we don't get it right, we again risk the social cohesion challenges that we face when something gets a little out of kilter. So that diversity, I think, is beautiful, and I am proud to be the Minister of Immigration and Refugees and Citizenship when we are at such an important time. It makes for really long days for the job that I hold, and that Ken and Suk hold me to account for whenever they come to see me and say, we need this for Surrey, and if you don't do it, we're gonna wring your neck. Suk tries, he does try, but and Ken gives it his best shot. But we have a great team here that support Surrey. I'm the least knowledgeable of Surrey in the room, but I feel like it's sometimes a second home when I have guys like Ken and Suk and John, for that matter, really fighting hard for the businesses that are here, but also the people that make it such a great place. So I'll leave it at that. We're going to do a question and answer session, so this is where the hard part starts. And looking forward to sitting down. And thank you again for the wonderful welcome to your city.
So everyone, if you do have a question or a comment, there is a microphone going around. Please raise your hand and a microphone will come to you. Please keep your question or comment very succinct, very brief, and the minister will respond accordingly. And state your name, your company name. We are recording today's session as well, and please be respectful. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Avsalur.
Thank you, Anita. Respected Minister of Immigration, thank you very much for coming here in Surrey. And thank you, Surrey Board of Trade, for organizing this event. Very quick but important question. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Conference Alliance. We are the leading conference organizer in Canada. We do organize conferences coast to coast. Now, sir, I have a quick question for you. We used to get special event code from IRCC when we organize an event. And that increases our credibility because our participants are coming from all over the world, not only from Canada, but also from other countries as well. For the last 6 months, we are not getting any IRCC special event codes. We are trying to contact with IRCC, and there is only an email address available in this respect. So can you please give us some direction, like how can we contact with IRCC, and what is the reason we are not getting IRCC special event code for our conferences? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This works? Yeah. So I can't say why you're not getting it, but we do provide it. My best recommendation to you would be to link up with my team, and we can work together on the special events coordination. We certainly do it. I'm certainly sometimes directly involved in making sure that people that have larger events, structured events, can do it in a way that doesn't leave everyone waiting for a visa with 1 week to go. I have been able to tease out some of the trends, I think, that pose challenges to people organizing large events. I think first and foremost is the lead time and making sure that everyone has their paperwork together. That is of a particular challenge depending on the source country where the people coming from originate. You've seen this publicly, but it's no secret that we are facing a lot of challenges with visa processing in India with only 4 or 5 dedicated IRCC workers on site, and that is a fraction of what we had even 6 or 7 months ago. Our global processing, meaning people that are outside the particular country where the request is coming from, has been able to pick up the slack, but there are some things that we have to do in country that does create that backlog. So the volume that I am seeing at the department is historic. There are lots of people who want to come to Canada for lots of different reasons. Most, if not all, legitimate. But it does have an effect on the volume and the planning. So as much as you can with a large lead time, we can scramble if it's an emergency, but I don't recommend it. But my best recommendation to you for your event would be to reach out to my team, and we can certainly look into it. It doesn't mean everyone. I don't know when your event is, but if it's soon, the clock is ticking. But we can try and do our best and get people through. What's that?
Yes, talk to your local
or obviously
MP.
talk to Suk, because Suk has some familiarity with this.
Next question.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, and your staff and our local politicians for your support. I'm on the advisory board of the Immigrant Networks, and one of the questions we, as a social enterprise organization, we have 23,000 new Canadian immigrant members, and 14,000 of those have been successfully employed since 2020 through our AI technology and use of combined human-to-human contact. What we'd like to know is, an organization such as yours, how can we serve the outcomes and the needs of your ministry through what it is that we do? Because there's many social organizations that are attempting to try to help, but we would like to work in line with what your needs are and how we can serve you.
Again, my best recommendation is that you met my team earlier, is that our team stay in contact. What you do may not completely overlap with the needs you have from us, but I think to have a better working relationship might be helpful. If we can't help you, we should at least be there to let you know, and vice versa. I think there are some potential areas where we can work together. Labor force matching is been extremely difficult, even though we say that we have points and we try to match them. Often people are giving up an entire generation to come here, which isn't right. You're actually leaving money on the table as long as innovation and capital. So I think that is what you have briefly presented to me prior to my speech seems really cool, and so we should talk a bit more about that and be glad to set that up with our teams.
Next.
Hi, thank you, Anita, for arranging this great get-together, and for Minister Marc Miller for coming over to listen to our questions and issues in the city of Surrey. As you know, city of Surrey is growing fast, and Anita Haberman is trying to cope up with all the concerns and business etiquettes that we are trying to achieve here. And IRCC, as we know, they're trying very hard and creating a safe haven for refugees and newcomers to come to Canada. And as they arrive here, they are very well taken care of. We appreciate Minister for that. We know that there are some problems always occur, and especially with the second and third generation Canadians are having really hard hit on employment. So there's a large unemployment rate now for that generation. And due to that, there are many youth who are getting very depressed, and they couldn't understand how the game all changed altogether, not finding any employment or not getting into any productive line of business. So the thing is that it's getting into, resulting into what we can call is mental health issues, and it's on the rise day by day, and we hear a lot of stories every single day that this is what's happening, and we don't know how to deal with that, how to help youth to kind of come out of that. And another, that unemployment rate, and then there is unemployment rate in international students as well, because we are nonprofit and progressive intercultural community services trying to help all different groups of people, including seniors, youth, and women, to help with their employment, and also to help them to integrate and settle in Canada. In one day, we had 18 international students came through our door to ask for employment, so we didn't know how to help them, although we're trying very hard to find something for them. So lack of housing, as you already mentioned in your speech, that it's a huge issue as well. So reverse immigration, we are seeing many people going back to their countries on a daily basis. So we really are in that situation that we know that ministry is working very hard and trying to solve the problems, but can we just know how it's going to be handled? Thank you.
That's a huge question.
Yeah, it's a really big question. Plus, I told you in my speech before, I'm the least knowledgeable person on Surrey in the room, so I can talk to you about some of the trends we're seeing, tightening labor markets, the work that we've done to get the international student visa program under a little better control. When you have half the designated learning institutions offering probably not the most robust, often business degrees to students, it's no secret that a lot of the people that came were not necessarily to study, a prospect perhaps of getting a job and perhaps permanent residency. So there are some very important choices that will have to be made over the coming months. As the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, I need to be able to focus on those three things. Unfortunately, it's drawn me into the areas of housing, labor markets, filling education. It shouldn't be an area where I necessarily should be the only person having an opinion or being able to decide, particularly in an area where in this case, the British Columbia government has a role to play in regulating institutions, regulating the labor markets. And that's something that I've had to work collaboratively with them. And I think in the last few months, the government of BC has done some really important work in trying to look at that ecosystem that's been created by international students in Surrey and around British Columbia to try and get rid of some of the worst parts of the ecosystem. It doesn't mean everything's perfect now, and you've highlighted that that is not the case. I took a difficult decision to reduce the work hours from 40 to 24 because we know that students that are working anything over 20 hours, 23, 24, especially over 30, aren't really prioritizing their education, or if they are, it is severely jeopardizing them. So perhaps that falls in the context of a tightening labor market at an opportune point in time. Wasn't necessarily the reason I did it. We shouldn't have kids working 40 hours. Conversely, not having a job, and if you're not studying, can really affect your mental health. People define themselves through what they do, and when they don't do anything, it can really affect you in terms of your health generally, but particularly your mental health. There are pockets of this reality across the country. It's sort of peppered around Ontario when it comes to international students, and it's frankly an unfortunate situation, and I think that's something that we have been carefully trying to address over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 months, especially a younger part of the population. Now, we do have a young segment of the population that is here. It may be that they are not going anywhere. Having to deal with that, I think, will be a challenge that we will have to address with, in this case, the government of British Columbia. I spoke to Minister Kang on Friday. We'll be having continual conversations with her in how they deal with this over the next coming weeks or months. I think that's one of the points that I was trying to make as part of my prepared speech, is that you take these. The international visa program is not something that was capped or as heavily regulated as for the last 40 years, and largely it behaved in a way that was responsible. It's only been in the last few years that things have gone a bit squirrely, and it's something that I think we'll have to continue to be making reforms, because at the end of the day, as much as I talk about mechanisms and procedures and reforms, you're talking about individuals who need to be treated with dignity. It may be the reality that some of these, a chunk of these students will have to go back to their home countries, or there will be others that will find a pathway to permanent residency, and or even continue their education. And we need to do that in a humane and a humanitarian way.
Next.
Hello, Mr. Miller. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jasbir Deogan. I am immigration consultant with Unique Immigration. I just want your take, what's the future for immigration in terms of all the pilot projects that are going on, especially towards the home support worker pilot, which is expiring next month. It was a 5-year program. The next one is RNIP. Looks like it has wrapped up, but maybe you guys are revamping it. So that's the next one I want to have your take on that. The third is agri-food pilot, which is very important for Canada, I understand. And the last one is Canadian Experience Class for the PGWP holders who have experience in Canada for 1 or maybe 2 years, but they do not have a pathway for PR. So if you can please shed some light on these. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll run through those briefly. It's no secret to anyone listening to me in the last little while that we are going to have to focus on the domestic labor market that's here, including doing increased domestic draws. I've been trying to make sure that my colleagues in the province focus, and they already do this with their PNP, but focus on the people that are here as opposed to having the sort of the knee-jerk reaction of doing it, going abroad. As much as there's talent abroad, there's talent here, and as we are looking at that domestic labor pool to properly match supply and demand is super important, and especially it is a potential of reducing people that are here temporarily if they have the skill set needed for permanent residency and have that Canadian experience. There's no reason why they should. That's not everyone, but it's a pool of people that are already here. Their impact on affordability at a macroeconomic level is already sort of, I would say, baked in. So that it makes sense from an economic perspective. We have to probably tailor and get it right. So those are my thoughts on that. I think you'll sort of have to watch the coming months for any official announcements on that. The rural northern immigration pilot is going to be made permanent, which is a good thing. I don't know the timing on it because I announced it a few months ago, but we are in the process of making it permanent, sort of doing a new pilot. I have to actually announce a new pilot to make something permanent, which sounds exactly the way IRCC sounds sometimes, but it will be permanent. There's also sort of in tandem with that, maybe of less interest in BC, but I think important for the national identity of our country, the Francophone immigration pilot. which will have sort of this similar type of parameters to it. And on the caregiver pilot, I think you should look out for some announcements in the next coming month. We know how important caregivers are, so I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. And I think at some point we should work towards making that permanent.
Thank you, Anita, for hosting this lovely event, and thank you, Minister, for joining us in our beautiful city. My name is Lenya Wilkes, and I work at Diversity Community Resources Society. As Anita shared earlier, Surrey is growing, on an average 28 new residents daily. It has the largest Black population, the largest urban indigenous population. It also has a very large youth population. So with a city that big and growing so rapidly, in nonprofit what we see is lots of wait lists on the services that we offer, language, case management, counseling. And thankfully through IRCC, we're funded through our equity project to build up grassroots organizations that are doing this work on the side of their desks through volunteer. But this program ends in August, sadly. But we need more organizations doing this work. And so my question is there a plan for IRCC to continue supporting projects like this that are building out other organizations to support immigrants as they settle? Because this is a need that is needed in the city of Surrey.
Yeah, and I can't speak to your organization or the funding, and I doubtless you're doing great work. You just see the need across the country of having more integrated services that deal with inclusion, diversity. IRCC can't, it does have to make sure it is focusing on what it focuses on. There are other parts of our government that are focused on that as well, but I think we have to be part of that conversation, because often it is newcomers that are the face of diversity as well. I go to a lot of citizenship ceremonies, so it's hard not to notice that. But I think it's definitely a good thing. But there are challenges that come with integration that IRCC can be a part of. So I would say stay tuned, but and also stay tuned with my team as well to follow up on funding. And didn't know it was coming to an end in August, so work with us.
Paola?
Hello, thank you, Minister, for being here. Thank you, Anita, for the invitation and for hosting this. My name is Paola Murillo. I'm the director of an organization called Latincover. For the last 16 years, we have been working in creating the voice for the Latin Americans, and it has been great. We are over 180,000 Latin Americans who have chose BC as their home. But we see now with the current laws and what's happening, I would love to have your advice how to communicate to my community. We know that we have the new restriction for the law for the visa for the community from Mexico, and also the students. I have a lot of people in my organization. We're around 35 people, volunteers, and people who work with us, who are panicked, who doesn't know what is going to be their future, what it's going to look like. We don't have, we're like, everything is going to be fine, try to build the confidence, you're going to be okay here, we need people in Canada, but they're afraid. People is afraid. The message that we understand, especially now, we know in 2018, according to the message from the media from CBC, from 338,000 in 2018 temporary laborers, now we have over 600 people who has applied for visas. So we understand, it's a pain. How can we communicate it to the people who really is here and try to make Canada their home country? That's one question. Second, my husband works in the farm industry, my brother in the construction. Both are suffering to find qualified people. And now with cutting the students, the hours of a student from 25 hours to 20, and all those changes is quite dramatically from them to adjust how do they jobs and actually thinking that they will have to pay now more for labor force. What do you also recommend that this will, how can companies can operate properly now?
I mean, Canada often gets accused of not as high productivity as the U.S. I think there's a lot of structural arguments that you could put forward. Younger labor force, relatively, the productivity increases with age. The way we tax people creates creates challenges as to when you measure, how you measure global productivity, which companies recognize earnings in which jurisdiction. Those are all sort of challenges. But it's doubtless that in some areas there is wage depression, and I think we have to address that. I didn't create an international student program for people for kids to go be working in the Walmart or whatever. If they choose to do it, it's fine. But that's not the idea behind the program, and that's why I reduced it from 40 to 20, 40 to 25, not 25 to 20. And I think that's generally a good thing. I did it with enough forewarning so that people can make their financial decisions as to when they apply to Canada, knowing that it is expensive to live here, and also increase some of the solvency requirements for students. Just because we need a program that was destined towards students. If we wanted a labor stream that is lower waged, I can do that, but I'm not going to do it because on the backs of students that are paying 50 grand, 40 grand, it doesn't make sense. Some of the measures that we had in place are ones that companies adjusted to post-COVID. It used to be, for some areas, 1 in 10 temporary foreign workers. It's up to 3. We've reduced it to 2, which is a middle ground. We haven't gone completely all the way back to pre-COVID numbers. I think employers are going to have to, again, do what we're trying to do, which is deploy efforts and not having necessarily the knee-jerk reaction of going on trade missions and getting people from abroad and then sort of returning them home. We have to look at that domestic labor force. If it means paying people a bit more, perhaps there's an argument to do it. That's not a decision I'm going to figure out here on the stage today, but there is a growing in a tightening labor market pool of labor. Now, there are market mismatches that exist. I get that, but there is going to have to be an adjustment by industry as to some of the decisions that were taken, I think very importantly, both for productivity, both to reduce the number of temporary people here that has gone up by a factor of 2 or 3 over the last, or during COVID. So those are adjustments that'll need to be made. The Mexican visa was a difficult decision in the face of really skyrocketing asylum claims that weren't seen as legitimate. There are lots of people fleeing violence from Mexico, but there was also a lot of migration that was getting out of control that had nothing to do with someone fleeing war or oppression. It was tied to the fact that there was visa-free travel, and we moved this one back to this ETA plus status where people actually have to go get biometrics now. It has dramatically reduced the number of people claiming asylum. And generally with Mexico, with the government of Mexico, it has been a good diplomatic relationship. We are nowhere where we were from an economic perspective, a trade perspective, in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. It is a much more mature conversation with a mature relationship with the Mexican government now. But it was something that we had to do. It was with too many asylum claims, being a huge chunk of an ever-growing number in Canada, we just had to do something. So this was sort of a reasonable middle ground that has yielded, I think, some positive results in the agricultural industry and the fish processing industry. There has been some adjustment that industries have to make to get visas stamped in Mexico or to other locations. But we have, and my team has scrambled to make sure that that part of the equation that we weren't really seeing with visa-free travel is properly addressed by IRCC. Again, any sort of regulation creates some turbulence. And as a government, sometimes there are challenges in communicating. So I would actually take your suggestions as to how to communicate this better, because it's something, it wasn't intended to target Mexican nationals or people from South America generally, or warnings that there's a lot of migration coming from South America. Doing it in the proper structured way and less of an irregular way is something that I think I have a challenge with my American counterpart to do when it comes to refugees coming from Colombia in particular now or elsewhere, but it's something that that if we can do it in a better way, we can actually save lives. And again, I'll take your coaching on communications.
Next.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Parisha. I am an immigration consultant and a licensed foreign worker recruiter with Desai Immigration. That's my company. I've been working in the industry for about 8 years. So we've seen ups and downs in immigration over the span of years. And it's worthwhile to mention that right now we're probably in the most tricky situation. I understand that you probably get a lot of hate because of immigration and the policies, but I would like to congratulate you and your team, because we're like the two ends of a rope. You get heat on the other end, and at the same time, we've been getting the same thing, right? I do want to acknowledge and appreciate all the policies and all the difficult steps that you guys have been taking to kind of not getting succumbed to the immigration problem, but actually address it in a right way. At the same time, we're also seeing these people suffer who are stuck here with no option but to return to their country. What do you think would be a better way to address this concern? Because these people have actually contributed to our economy at a larger level, right? Working here for 3-4 years, and now having to go back to nothing is a situation that we hear people on an everyday basis, and there's nothing really that we can do about it. That's my first question. And my second question was, we see that work permits are going to be extended for Manitoba workers for particular fields. I hear that Saskatchewan is next in the line. Are we going to be seeing all different provinces in the same direction, or it's just going to be strictly to that? Thank you.
So, thank you for the question. In some sense, I wish I had a better answer for you on your first question than I'm going to give you. I don't. The reality is that for a variety of reasons, there are people here that don't have that prospect to stay, and there are things we can do and the things we can't do. As you said, I disagree with a lot of people saying send everyone home. I think it's xenophobic. I think it's tendentious. I don't think it actually deals with the issue that those particular people in the first place are struggling with. But the reality is that there is no pathway for the numbers that we have for everyone that is here, and I can't change that. So I guess that leads me into sort of the second point, which is the work that we've done with the government of Manitoba, that reached out to me and said, "Can you just extend these postgraduate work permits?" And I said, "Well, if I do that, I have to do it for everyone, and we can't. This was a COVID measure that was extending, and we can't extend it ad nauseum." And I said, "But if you come up with a program, you, government of Manitoba, that understands your labor market, understands the people there, because it isn't, when you have a program that is unlimited, often people don't actually capture the data or capture where people are going into. If someone is, I'm very willing to work with a government that says, look at all these people working in this skilled labor program, and look at the jobs they are getting. They're directly matched to the education that they have. That makes sense to me. But if someone came for a business degree, spent a ton of money, and is driving an Uber, that makes a little less sense, right? Not that there isn't any dignity in work. People making money is people working hard for the most part. But that's not an international student visa program, and not something necessarily a guy like me should be solving all on his own. So the public policy that I announced with the government of Manitoba wasn't directed at the government of Manitoba. They took advantage of it. It's directed at all governments that if they want to take responsibility for a labor market force that they want to sponsor as part of their provincial nominee program, I'm not going to stand in the way. And I think that kind of makes sense, because they know their labor markets generally. Not that we don't understand and fully appreciate the global labor market in Canada, but local labor markets are properly understood and appreciated by in this case, the BC government. So the door's open to them, and it's something that we can work on if they choose that path. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you, Anita, for hosting this event. Minister Miller, it's no secret that you have the toughest job in the world. Thank you for being incredibly good at it. Earlier today, you did mention about the conversations you were having around the recognized framework, institution framework. My question is, are you listening to any private post-secondary voices in the space to develop this framework, and when can we expect to learn more about what this framework entails? Thank you.
Yeah, look, my team is willing to have conversations. I think one of the more important things, taking a step back, that I tried to do was make sure that provinces, and this isn't a criticism of British Columbia, because when I first announced these measures, British Columbia had a number of measures it was about to take, and that had been doing in a long time. So I felt a lot of willingness to work with us on the challenges that they were feeling here, particularly in Surrey. And so that's an ongoing discussion that we can have with them, how they allot their number of student visas. The recognized model is one that requires, or will require, institutions to make sure that there is proper housing available, proper services, and a program that can live up to the expectations of the labor market, and perhaps the ability to integrate as a result. So nothing against it in principle. It's just that we have to fold in the important actor in here that actually has that responsibility under the Constitution, which is the government of British Columbia. So I'm not closing the door by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not necessarily picking on privates, although some privates have been at the source of this. But if some institutions can create a business model where they are properly welcoming people as part of this framework, it's something that we can look at without making that commitment directly to you. It's supposed to launch, because of this is such a turbulent year in terms of the numbers and how they play out. This year itself is not a very good indicator of future performance, because we want to actually see what these measures yield. But it's something we can work at with over time once the system gets stable.
Lily.
Sorry, I'm nervous. My name is Lily Zhao from Unique Immigration Limited. I'm regulated immigration consultant. I'm so honored to be invited here to talk with you, ask questions. Thank you for Surrey Board. And I have 3 questions. My first question is that for the self-employed, last, I think April passed, right, for 2 years. Do you think it is temporarily or permanently? And my suggestion next time, if RCC announce some pause of the program, can you give us, immigration consultant, more time? Because this program announced in the morning, closed in the evening. So I have everyone mess up, because we need a summit. Otherwise, our clients will be very angry, anxious. So next time, can you give us like 1 month, not 1 day? Second question.
That's not a question, that's a statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Is because I'm the owner of the immigration consultant. Recently, lots of program is closed the door, closed the international student, closed the self-employed, closed the BCPMP some. Making me think about, I have 7 employees. How can we survive these 2 years? How can I pay them for the salary? So sometimes, do you, RCC, have announced some public policy, transfer the temporary foreign worker to the permanent resident to make him, let us to survive? I know next 3 or 4 years will be very critical for our immigration industry, but do you consider, we have like 7,000 immigration consultants globally. Do you consider we need to make money to support our family? I have an employee, right? Can you consider this way for us? This is only second question. Third question is that, I totally understand. Now, temporary foreign worker program cut down is because the housing service, they want proper service, proper housing. On the other side, if we limited the temporary foreign worker, or not only worker, residents or tourism can bring money to Canada. If we block this door to marketing, in the marketing economic, most of like private college, our business, our immigration business, or some industrial will have less revenue. If we have less revenue, we cannot pay the employee more salary. So yes, after 2 years, the housing price is down. But do you consider our salary or our income is down too? So the gap between the housing and our income still there. I think this is, I want to, every government think about this one. So if our salary lower down and we cannot pay the employee salary is low. Yes, last year they can make $50,000 per year, but this year they only can make $30,000 a year. So this is another thing I want government to consider about market economic. Thank you very much.
I think you've given me a lot of things to consider, and I can't guarantee the results. I have trouble thinking that an immigration consultant is going to lose money over the next few years, given all the policy changes. But I don't want to downplay what you see in your industry. I'm not an immigration consultant, so I do respect the views. I can give you my thinking behind the numbers, and I'm not saying it's the best answer, but it's mine. It was undeniable that the numbers were having an impact on affordability and volume generally, particularly a number of policies that we've taken, whether it's to alleviate the challenges in the labor market post-COVID. We went into COVID with a labor shortage in a lot of key areas. We've probably, even though recently we've taken a number of measures to kind of surgically target some areas, we still have challenges in and around accreditation. We still have challenges in matching actual people and their skills to the jobs on the sites. That is something I am hoping to do more policy work around in the next little while, knowing that this is a market that is tightening. In a context of food inflation, it is very difficult to justify areas where, particularly when there's no Canadians working in it, you would restrict, particularly in the agricultural area, temporary foreign labor, even though that has jumped. But there are perhaps areas where industries have gotten addicted to temporary foreign labor. And that, I think, is, it's undeniable, but it's also something that we need to look at as a country, because we can't just have those significant jumps from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% overnight without actually scratching our heads and saying, where do we need to address it? What I want to avoid is the impacts on some of the perverse effects that can be had on industry and damaging in very important economic models. But that doesn't mean there won't have to be adjustments in some areas. Again, without the understanding of how different local labor markets work, it's hard to take these decisions from Ottawa without this having consequences. So that was some of the really difficult conversations that we had on Friday with my fellow immigration ministers, who often themselves are playing the role of simultaneously as labor ministers. And there's probably some irony in that. But they have a sense of their markets as well. And sharing of data, I think, was a very important point, because every decision that the federal government makes in Ottawa can have a ripple effect across the country, that perhaps with some unintended consequences, and can sometimes actually cost us our jobs. So we want to be able to get that right. My colleague Randy Boissonneau, who plays a role here as well, has some work to do. There is labor market impact assessment fraud that we need to get a better grip on. That fraud, and you've all probably heard more than anecdotes about the ability to purchase these labor assessments. It's wrong, and we need to crack down on it. So again, you won't be short of work, but I will, giving people a heads up. We try our best actually to consult and give people sort of a sense of where things are going. When they are sensitive issues that can move markets, we have to be a little more judicious in who we tell. But generally, if you're feeling that we're not getting enough information from us, we can certainly work and do a better job of that.
So we're going to take 2 more questions, and I'm going to ask you to limit it to 1 question each, please.
Hi there. Anita, thank you very much for organizing this event, and thank you to the Surrey Board of Trade. Minister Miller, thank you for coming. My name is Vicky Buchler. I'm just a part of the growing Filipino community in Metro Vancouver, and my question is, well, I know that there are a lot of immigration groups here, settlement groups as well, and we really appreciate what the organizations have been doing for the international students as well as temporary workers in Canada, especially in BC. But my question is, I know that there are a lot of this support that's provided when they get here. What are your thoughts about making that education and planning, especially financial planning, available to people before their visas get stamped on their passports and before they actually board that plane to come to Canada, so that when they get here, it's not a surprise, the rent, how much does it cost, really the cost of living, so it's not a surprise for them, taxation, banking, even, retirement planning, investments and all that. So what are your thoughts about making that more of a requirement, so then people coming here, they're not just winging it, and then it becomes sort of a community issue, trying to help them when financial becomes finances become an issue when they get here. Thank you.
It's a really good point. I mean, I worry about it less when and not that it isn't a problem with our economic classes of immigrants, even parents, grandparents, and spouses. That's like 80% of our immigration, and that is a challenge in and of itself. But I worry less about it because these are people generally coming with capital that can contribute to the economy right away. Obviously, there comes kind of some rude surprises about our levels of taxation and whatnot. Where I do worry about it, I think, is when with international students that have sort of had their hopes entertained, particularly in countries that have sort of working with third-party agents as a part of the culture, with all the good and bad that comes with that. And you have people kind of gaming the system. And if kids knew more and didn't feel like they have to, borrow from family members and whatnot, it would really help the integrity of the system, but also make for the student experience, in this case, a lot better than it has been for a number of people. So I think it's smart. We do deploy efforts overseas, whether they can be matched and even I think they're probably surpassed by a number of people sending out false claims. I think if we did a better job doing what you said we are doing, we wouldn't have as challenging a problem with international students in particular, and those that come under more precarious situations of temporary work to Canada. We tend to want to focus. We've got enough challenges within Canada, but having the financial literacy, solvency tests, all those matters, I think would be much better. Right now, there isn't, other than probably very small targeted programs, that effort there. But it's a really good point. Hopefully, it wouldn't dissuade people from coming to Canada. I know we've had a lot of talk. A filter. Well, that's right. And I know at least this is what the Filipino government tells me, but they are starting to do work in that area as well, because of what the impact of different countries coming to the Philippines and taking some really skilled labor that, yes, you're well paid when you go to Germany or England or Canada, but it does have an impact on the social structure of communities in the Philippines. So I had an interesting conversation with the foreign minister about that just 2 days ago. And so it's not like our impact that we have on other countries is something that I think we need to think a little bit better about, and how we make those bilateral, multilateral relationships better, knowing the talent pool that we are getting and what they are leaving, what they are bringing. It has to be matched what the expectations are as well. There's been a lot of talk recently about reverse migration. I think someone posed this question before. It's been measured, and I'm not sure. I sort of have the counter argument that I have historic volume of people wanting to come to Canada, so that is less of a concern. It isn't unconcerning because capital is mobile, and people can pick and choose which place they want to go. So that demographic matters to me a lot, because you want to be able to preserve that capital in Canada, make people get their Canadian citizenship, and not sort of pack up shop and go to somewhere else and move with their capital to another country. It's increasingly done because capital is more and more labor, and people will kind of vote with their feet. But it's less of a, I think it's less of a challenge in a situation where Canada is still one of the, if not the most desirable countries in the world.
Unfortunately, we only have time for one more question, so this will be the final.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita, and Surrey Board of Trade. Thank you, Minister. I have a comment and a question. So we do have the workforce here in Surrey and in Canada, but we lack the trades training. Like the proper training, we lack significantly. So I do feel like we need to put more funding into trades training, especially for our youth newcomers. That's really, really key. Number two is the refugee claimant issues. So we do have refugees here in Canada, but we also have a refugee claimants issue. So a lot of refugee claimants are here in Canada. They don't know what their, what's going to happen with their case. They're just waiting for a long time. So I would like you to comment on that. And then also about the Gazans. The visa was started on January 9th, opened up the visa policy, but people are just getting their codes just last week. So anything for that from the Palestinian community? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll go in reverse orders. The program that I put in place at the end of December and that opened up in January 9th is pretty unique around the world. There are, I don't think, any other countries that did it the way we did it. What I asked my team is that if this is going to work, it has to be done in a structured way. Getting out of particularly Rafah, even before the war, getting out of Gaza is challenging. Getting a visa to Canada. We got 1,000 permanent residents Canadians out, and then instituted this program for families of, they're not Canadians, they're not permanent residents, people that are connected to families. And so opening up the program on January 9th, I thought was important to do, a reflection of us as a country having to try, knowing that it did not, the chance of success depended on a number of factors that had nothing to do with Canada, controlling the entry and exit at the Rafah gates, largely controlled by Egypt and the Israeli Minister of Defense. We have worked in, and there's stuff that I can't speak to publicly too, but we have deployed a number of diplomatic efforts to get people out in a structured way through the Israeli Minister of Defense. It hasn't worked with that list because these people are not Canadians or Canadian permanent residents. Recently, we've had some hope, although, again, recent events have kind of dashed a bit of that hope. People have gotten out to Cairo. We modified the program a few months ago. Let me back up. The program wasn't intended to deal with people that were paying bribes to get out of Rafah, get into Cairo, and then do the processing there. I can't encourage people to pay bribes, but what I can do is understand the fact that people take their lives into their own hands, find themselves finally in safety, and are perhaps eligible under the program that we put into place in relatively short order. There have been over a couple hundred visas issued finally for those people, but the program that I put in place was predicated on getting, will be more than 1,000, but 1,000 plus people out based on a triage process where we couldn't go and do biometrics in a war zone or had any sort of information about people. So kind of doing it remotely and then completing the work in Cairo is a two-stage process that we haven't really done other than in Afghanistan. And it's been of limited success. I'll be quite honest about it. It hasn't been through lack of effort, but it's lack of effort that has not yielded the type of success that we wanted to see. We're continuing to do that. The web code aspect is one that I and my team keep and stay focused on. There's a lot of duplication in it, and there's a lot of overlap. There's people that send things 2-3 times, so hard to comment on a detail of that. If you have specific cases, those are ones I think would be important to draw to the attention of my team, because we've sorted out some of the stuff that's messy. Obviously, limited communication, hard to get things in. The devil's in the details, but the details actually do matter. And if we can save a life, then it's worth doing. We've gotten people out on an ad hoc basis for medical procedures, highly pregnant women that needed cesarean sections. That is something that we'll continue to advocate for. But again, I just hope there's a comprehensive ceasefire soon. I missed your. I've been thinking about this question, and I missed your initial point. What? Oh, yeah. So you're right. I mean, we can't for all the work that we want to do as a country, we can't train everyone domestically. We probably should be focusing on more trade and skilled trade training. There's some amazing work going around the country. That said, some of the pitches that I've gotten from my provincial counterparts was that these visas that we are trimming down on will affect trades. And I've told them, if it does, let's fix it together, but give me the data to support what you're saying. Because there is actually a role to be played by colleges and even universities that have some trade vocation to them to make sure that we are actually bringing people up to the skill that they need in order to integrate the labor force. But let's do it together and let's do it well. We do also have to bring in people from abroad with the skill set to get them properly trained up and on-site relatively quickly, particularly in the commercial construction area where you have an aging workforce. There's work that I am continuing to do. There have been recent articles saying that we are doing a bit of a better job in bringing people over in the construction industry, but we're not out of the woods on that discussion. But I agree with you on the points you made. We should be investing in trades, particularly in areas where you see people aging out.
Everyone, a round of applause for Minister Miller. Everyone, thank you so much for attending today. You know, it's a challenging topic and a challenging ministry. We don't envy you at all. But the city of Surrey, as I mentioned, is the highest newcomer destination within British Columbia. And we're here to work with the federal government to try to mitigate things, to really move the economy. So thank you so much, Minister. So everyone, just a reminder about a couple of things. Tomorrow we have the Mayor of Vancouver, Ken Sims, coming out to Surrey. He's going to be talking about all things FIFA and regional economic development opportunities. So that's right here at the Sheraton at noon. And on May 15th, we have about 5 consul generals coming to the Surrey Board of Trade, representing our ASEAN destinations. And so they're here to talk about trade and economic opportunities. So for future upcoming events, check our website out at businessinsurrey.com. And everyone, make it a great business day. Thank you.